Hey, what is going on, everybody? And today I want to talk about the winners and losers of patch 5.9. And what I mean by this is taking a good look at their overall value when it comes to stats. We can kind of see how they line up against themselves, but also against other characters. Specifically from this patch, since it is quite a large one, I will be making an honorable mention comparison to Cersei and Icarus, and even Dormammu, and I think we know how that's going to go down, but it's interesting nonetheless. I think doing comparisons like this will give you all a good idea of who you should be focusing your red stars on as well, since it will give you some insight on their growth potential based on their individual stats. So that's on the agenda for today, but before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video. Hey everyone, if you're looking for an awesome new way to play Marvel Strike Force and other Android games on your PC, then look no further than LDPlayer, one of the best emulators anywhere. Not only does it boast incredibly smooth gameplay, but you can also open up many instances of it for multiple accounts simultaneously if you want to. And if all of this sounds good to you, then why not try it out? You can download from their official site at ldplayer.net or follow the link in the description below. So what are you waiting for? Download now and get your gaming started today. Alright, and so I made a brand new spreadsheet, of course, for this patch, and I'm calling this the patch 5.9 character stats spreadsheet. I am going to be updating this, I think, each subsequent patch, because I think there's some really good information in here. So, just to let people know that all of these stats are based on level 85, gear tier 15, 7 yellow, 5 red, Stark Tech 25%, and this is ranks based on 189 characters as of patch 5.9. So, as we go into new patches, things like this is going to get updated. If you see any of the ranks with a green background, that means that it's really good. That means that they're within the top 25 characters in the game with these stats. If they are 75 to 110, they'll have an orange or yellow background, and that's mainly just to show, like, they're average. It's an average stat, a very average stat. And if there's any reds, you might see some already at the bottom, that they're some of the worst. This is like the last 25 ranks in the roster. So let's get started with the Web Warriors, because I want to start here first. And we talked about this a little bit before, specifically on OG Spider-Man and Miles, but now I want to kind of show it off with the whole team. So it's quite interesting. Let's start with health. So OG Spider-Man actually is the worst one on the team. That being said, his rank is actually just below Symbiote Spider-Man. So I have little comments here. If you see a red triangle, there's special comments here. So it's not bad. You know, comparatively, that's good, and it'll actually get more hit points from Scarlet Spider as well. So there's some team notes at the bottom as well after we talk about some of these things. Miles is actually a little bit surprising on how well his rework is as well. Ghost Spider 31, Scarlet Spider number 9 in the game. Now this is due to him having a team hit point passive as well as an individual hit point passive, which is caked into his own stats. So all of the other Web Warriors will have their health improved by having Scarlet Spider on the team, and this is also, I believe, outside of raids. So as long as they're together, they'll have even more enhanced health. You can notice the Ghost Spider and Spider-Punk have about the same for health. Damage-wise, it's interesting, right? So Ghost Spider has number 3, which is some of the highest damage in the game. She has a damage passive on herself, plus damage to Web Warriors in raids. So characters like Phyla-Vell, and when we get to T'Challa as well, they're very high damage stat characters because they have damage caked into their own passive. The others, though, surprisingly all share the same damage stat rework, you know, in the case of OG Spider-Man and Miles, and it's identical to Scarlet Spider and Spider-Punk. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, OG and Miles are going to be stronger or as strong as Scarlet Spider and Spider-Punk, because their kits are significantly different, and these tables do not take into account kits for the most part, other than stat passives, so do keep that in mind as well. As far as armor, they're actually all the same. Armor rank 47 to 59. That means that they share it actually with like 12 other different characters. But for the purposes of the Web Warriors, they all have the same armor, which is kind of interesting. Focus, they're actually not too bad. So Ghost Spider is one of the better ones here at rank 14. But Spider-Punk also has significant focus at top 21. So that's really good because Spider-Punk has like some trauma on his kit that's really important in raids. Ghost Spider has some debuffs as well. So all these are really important. What is interesting is that OG Spider-Man ranks at 63. So I don't know if this means that you might need to run a skirmisher ISO necessarily on OG, because compared to the other characters, you know, he does suffer a little bit. I mean, it's not significant, because if you notice stat-wise, you know, this is like 1,500 difference between OG and Miles. But this might make a difference when it comes to landing your debuffs reliably. It's hard to say without actually using the characters. So resistance-wise, I mean, they're not really known for their resistance. The best ones are Miles and Scarlet Spider, but other than that, they actually are all the same other otherwise at rank 51 to 53. And speed, we'll get to this new column that I have. You can't see it now. It's called what I call power creep. And we're going to talk about how I got here. The speed is not actually relevant to this, but there's one thing that I want to talk about, and that is Spider-Man's speed. I did mention this in my Discord, but the T4 related to Spider-Man's speed is a 5% boost. However, that means that he's going to have a base of 116, and after the T4, it's 122 after the first turn is taken. You guys might be familiar with this with Black Widow and Daredevil. They share the exact same kit. This is going to be reflected in the next hotfix, that it's actually after Spider-Man takes his first turn, then he gets the 122. So there was a little bit of confusion around that I want to clear up. Now, this final column here that I have is what I call power creep top percent of overall roster. If you look, I don't know, you can see on the top, I did a lot of math here, and basically I took the ranks of each of the categories other than speed, I divided it by 5 and compared it against the entire roster, and that got me with this value here. And actually I noticed this one here is okay, one value wrong. So that's 27%. So the lower the percent, the better in this instance. That means that against the whole entire roster of 189 characters, this is kind of where they stack up against others. So you can see down below, there's a little bit of spoilers. But what this really means here is that we're actually getting some of the highest stats here on Scarlet Spider here on this 4th row, and that's 14.7%. Now, basically that means against the entire roster, he's got the top 14.7% of stats, you know, with all of the 5 major categories combined. There is a few caveats here that I did weight them equally, and some people might say, well, health and damage is worth more than armor, focus, and resistance. But, you know, in order to actually do this scientifically and do this consistently, I had to, you know, do something about that. And for this reason, I'm just doing all equally across the board. But, you know, obviously, this is just a guidance tool to kind of share with you, you know, how high their stats really are. And I think that's kind of interesting. So second for the Web Warriors is Ghost Spider at 16.3%. Third is Spider Punk at 18.6%. Miles at 18.8%. And actually 27% is OG Spider-Man. So as far as total stats, these kind of reflect the kind of red star priorities that you should have for these characters. So you'll want to focus on Scarlet Spider first, Ghost Spider second, Spider-Punk third. Obviously, these are the newer characters, and they have better kits as well. So, you know, we haven't even talked about the kits because that's not the purpose of this video, but obviously the newer characters should do that. But if you're kind of like toiling over whether or not to get a 5 red from Miles or OG, I would probably go for that Miles first before OG Spider-Man and do that one after. Some special team notes, of course, passives bump their stats up further. Example, Ghost Spider, raid damage, and Scarlet Spider health. The crit chance and crit damage from Scarlet Spider and Spider-Punk increasing their potential further in raids. And they have a very large dodge chance to try and offset their armor, but their armor is not the worst by any means. You can see that they have kind of, they're above average, actually, so it's not too terrible here. Now, let's talk about magic. We're just going to be talking about magic very quickly because I don't intend to go on too much about this. She actually has a very average health pool, which, as far as a new character goes, isn't that good, but she does try to offset this with her own barrier mechanics and with Colossus' increased passive health going from 15% to 30%. So hopefully some of this actually makes up for Magic's low stat and health. That being said, for damage, she is, you know, above average, but it does share with some other characters. Gamora, Cersei, Adam Warlock, and Cap Sam in this same category of the same damage stat, so that's kind of interesting. As far as armor goes, Magic actually has one of the top 5 armor stats in the game, so that's quite significant here. She also shares this armor passive with herself and the team, so that's why her stat is so high. I believe it's 25%. I don't have it on hand. I should have wrote it down below, but, you know, we're not really here to talk too much about Magic. Her focus, though, is number 14. This is pretty solid. Resistance also pretty solid at rank number 12, so the more green squares, the better. If it has yellow, it's kind of and if it's red, that's kind of bad. So you can kind of see that as we look forward down below to the Ravagers. Now, in terms of her speed, it's very average. Actually, it's a little bit below average at rank 126. But if you add in all of the stats together, then you're actually getting a percent total of 19.7%. That's not too bad, but I think where it actually suffers is her health. I think because of that, she doesn't score a little bit better. So in terms of where that ranks, that's actually a little bit worse than Miles and Spider-Punk. So compared to some of the other newer characters, she doesn't stack up as well. However, like I said, it doesn't take into the full account of her kit, but, you know, I'm not super impressed with Magic so far. Magic is a weird one that kind of slots in with the Uncanny X-Men, you know, does a little bit more than they did before, but I don't think it's going to be a priority in my opinion for this patch. I think something that we're going to want to focus on is the Web Warriors, but let's take a look at the Ravagers anyways, because it also includes T'Challa, and I want to talk about this. So you can see for Yondu stats here, not too great. You know, rank 124 health. He actually shares the same damage stat as Magic, so it's okay. It's been improved significantly from the rework, but his armor, oh boy, you know, 160 out of 189 in the game. It is not very good. He's very squishy here, and we're going to talk about how we can bump these totals up. His focus is okay. It's a little bit above average at rank 62. His resistance is very much in the middle ground at 90 to 111. So these 21 characters actually share the same stat, and his speed is also kind of average at 112 for rank 84. He scores a 51.9%. So the reason for this is his really bad armor stat. His health is also kind of below average as well, and the rest of his stats, well, it's kind of in the middle ground. So as far as newer characters and reworks go, his was actually the worst. Now, we're going to get to T'Challa, because the numbers for this is kind of interesting. So his health is very average. T'Challa is very average on the health total. That being said, his damage is number 2 in the game. So he is a prime example of a glass cannon character. Almost reminds me a little bit about Baron Zemo when he first came out, because his stats were very good. He's a quintessential glass cannon as well. The reason why T'Challa is number 2, again, just like Ghost Spider, he has a damage passive for himself, and it shares with Ravager allies similar to Phyla-Vell, Ghost Spider, and some of these other characters. Now, his armor stat ranks 109 out of 189, so it's not that good. It's a little bit below average, actually. Focus is okay at 48. There is certain instances where he needs this. He needs to land his blind on his special, which allows him to steal ability energy, so this is somewhat important, actually. His resistance, though, very average, you know, same as Yondu, and his speed is pretty good at 125, which ranks him in the top 20 of characters for speed. Now, this gives him a grand stat total of 35.9%. And so this is okay, but the reason for this is because while he has a very high damage stat, and you know, if I had weighted this differently, perhaps the percentages would be different, but it is an equal weight across the board on the 5 major stats. As you can see, the rest of the stats for armor, focus, resistance, and health are very much in that average range, so that really lowers down his overall stat potential. So he is someone, obviously, if you're going to want to use him in Doom Raid Tech, is a character that you're going to want to have high red stars on, but I just wanted to kind of point this out to you. Comparatively to the Web Warriors, who all score within the top 20%, you know, in this power creep, T'Challa is mainly there for his damage, whereas the other characters have a very good, you know, wide range of stats, so that's really good there. Now, we're going to talk about the 3 Ravagers all together, and then we're going to talk about the characters from last patch, just for sheer curiosity. So, some of the best you can see here, that Ravager Stitcher is actually one of the best recipients for health in this rework. He is in the top 21 characters in the game for health, believe it or not. This is largely to do with his 25% health passive, but he got a significant rework on his health. Other points out is the Ravager Stitcher damage. This is actually shared with Cable, Captain Marvel, Ultimus, and Hulk, characters such as this, but you can see that there's a lot of yellow across the board here, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So Ravager Stitcher's armor is actually decent as far as a support character goes in a minion, shared also with Hulk, Polaris, and Misty Knight. Ravager Bruiser's armor is really good, but this is because he's got a 25% armor passive compared to the rest, and he shares this, with the rest of the Ravagers, but there's a lot of yellow going on here. So if it's not green, it's not really worth mentioning, and the reds are worth mentioning because it's pretty bad. So Ravager Boomer actually has some of the worst resistance in the game. I don't know if any of these are really a big deal because it is a war offense team. It's not meant for a defense team, but that's just how it is. So let's get to their stat totals, and in case you can pause this at any time if you want to take a better look. Ravager Boomer, 49.3%. So as far as that goes, he is the second worst next to Yondu. That being said, you know, he's mainly there for some of his damage. He's also there for his turn rewind on his special now. They're also really, and when we get to the team notes, you know, this will be why they're kind of this bad on the percentages. Stitcher is actually one of the best reworks for the Ravagers at this point in time at 32.4%. Comparatively to the other characters, this is actually really good and actually exceeds the stat totals of T'Challa, believe it or not. But once again, T'Challa is a bit of a glass cannon there meant to do damage. Ravager, Bruiser at 33.8%, also both really good. So Stitcher and Bruiser really good. And then T'Challa. That being said, T'Challa is still a new character with a better kit overall, so you're still going to want to get red stars on him if you're focusing on him. So some special team notes for the Ravagers. They're very buff reliant on their kits. There's lots of on-spawn buffs to bolster their lower stats, so that's really important. And T'Challa will be extremely important to their survival with 50% hit points in War Offense. They get 25% hit points in all game modes, and then an additional 25% specifically in War Offense, giving a whopping plus 50% health. So for all of these characters with kind of meh health totals, it will be increased further. T'Challa's actually reflects 25%, the rest do not, and T'Challa himself will also get an additional 25% in War Offense as well. So, taking a look at all that, I want to share with you Dormammu, Cersei, and Icarus, because I think it's really funny, and it's probably to no surprise that Dormammu actually has some of the best stats in the game. You know, he scores, I'm pretty sure, has the best scoring that I've seen, and it's at 3.2%. Now, you're never going to find a character, I don't think you're going to find a character that's 1%, because it's a combination of all 5 of the stats individually, but this is the best percentage I have seen in the game since I've, been doing this, which admittedly hasn't been very long, but it's interesting when you stack it up with some of the characters this patch. If you have anywhere between 10 to 20%, this is really, really good, and obviously it doesn't reflect the kits. So Cersei and Icarus here, you can see some really important stuff here. I'm not going to get into all of it. Where Icarus actually is the worst is his focus, but it's really deceiving since Icarus has 500% focus baked into his ult. So despite having, a rank of 112 to 125 on his focus stat, it doesn't really matter too much because of that bump that he gets on his ult. And actually, not the rest of his kit really isn't reliant on focus. It's just mainly damage, so you don't really need that there. Otherwise, you get a lot of green squares with Icarus. Cersei also has quite a few green squares as well. She's 3rd in focus, which is really, really good, and 4th in health. So this is really quite exceptional. So again, as the percentage is 13.1% for Cersei, which is good and technically better than Icarus, but like I said, it's a little bit deceiving, the 16.7%, because he's losing some percent here with having a low focus, but he doesn't really need that. So all in all, really, really good. Again, if you compare this to some of the Web Warriors, you're seeing some of the better characters like Ghost Spider here is the 3rd one at 16.3%. Scarlet Spider at 14.7% and 18.6% for Spider-Punk. So anyone in the top 20% is really, really good. Even OG, he's only at 27%. Some of the reasons for this is because of his health is rank 69. His focus is rank 63. Kind of draws him down a little bit. But other than that, it's not terrible. But you can see the immediate difference between characters like that and even Magic compared to the Ravagers. So that's quite interesting there. Some final notes with Cersei and Icarus. In case you guys weren't aware, they have huge stat passives. So 30% health, 50% damage in Arena and Dark Dimension combined, 30% armor, and 50% focus and resistance. So all of these green numbers and all of these stats are just bumped further when they're together. So this is insane. So yeah, it doesn't reflect these things or reflects the kits, like I said, but I think it's really interesting nonetheless. So I think in future patches that I'm going to carry on doing a spreadsheet like this. I hope that this was actually kind of illuminating for some of you, that kind of gives you an idea of like where they are comparatively to other characters from the patch as far as power creep goes, and it gives you an idea of kind of which characters you also want to focus on for your red star. So for me, when the Web Warriors become available, obviously to me, I always thought that I kind of knew this already, but Scarlet Spider and Ghost Spider are going to be the Web Warriors that you're going to want to focus on your red star pulls where possible. Spider-Punk, obviously, as a newer character, is also equally important here at 18.6%, but I think he's like kind of 3rd in my opinion compared to some of the others. But he's going to be a campaign event character as well, so you'll be able to get some decent yellow stars on him too, which obviously we won't be talking about here in today's video. We'll have tons more time to talk about all of this and all of the characters in the days and weeks ahead. So just wanted to share this with you all. I will make this available in my Discord channel, so if you aren't a community member there, I recommend joining up, and you can find the link in the description below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I will see you all later. Boilon signing out.